You didn't knock, I said sharply, my voice slicing through the silence like a blade. Standing in the doorway was Noah, my 20-year-old stepson. His hand lingered on the doorknob, his expression caught between defiance and hesitation. My irritation at the intrusion was immediate, but his face gave me pause. He wasn't just barging in. Something else was at play here. The room was dimly lit, the soft hum of rain tapping against the window adding an almost cinematic weight to the moment. I had been sitting on the edge of my bed, lost in a novel, trying to unwind after a long day. My marriage to Peter, Noah's father, had been the start of many beautiful things, but navigating the complexities of a blended family was still a work in progress. Noah took a tentative step inside, his sneakers squeaking slightly against the hardwood floor. I needed to talk to you, he said, his voice low, almost swallowed by the room. I closed the book slowly, marking the page, but keeping my finger on it like a shield. About what? There was a weight in the air now, an unspoken tension that I couldn't place. His eyes darted around the room, never settling on mine for more than a moment. It was uncharacteristic of him. Noah was usually self-assured, bordering on brash. This quiet, almost vulnerable side of him was unfamiliar. It's nothing, he mumbled, turning slightly as if to leave, but he hesitated. I sighed, softening my tone. Noah, if it's important enough to walk in here like this, it's important enough to say. What's going on? He turned back to me, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his hoodie. I've been thinking about some things, and I don't know who else to talk to. That caught me off guard. Noah and I didn't have a particularly close relationship, not strained, but not overly warm either. He had been polite enough after Peter and I got married, but there was always a sense that he was keeping me at arm's length. I gestured toward the chair near the desk. All right, sit down, and let's talk. He shook his head. No, I don't want to sit. His voice was firmer now, but there was still a tremor beneath it, a crack in the foundation. I leaned back against the headboard, studying him. His shoulders were tense, his jaw set, but his eyes told a different story, one of uncertainty and perhaps fear. I'm listening, I said after a moment. Noah exhaled sharply, running a hand through his tousled dark hair. I've been feeling weird. About us. About this whole family thing. He finally met my gaze, and for the first time, I saw the storm brewing behind his calm exterior. What do you mean? I asked cautiously. He hesitated again, as if searching for the right words. It's just, ever since you and Dad got married, it's been different. I don't know where I fit anymore. I feel like I'm in the way. Or like, he trailed off, the words hanging in the air like a challenge. Like what? I pressed gently. Like I'm not supposed to be here, he finished, his voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. This wasn't what I had expected when he walked in, unannounced and uninvited. His words carried a depth of vulnerability that I hadn't seen in him before. You're not in the way, Noah, I said carefully. This is your home, as much as it's mine or your dad's. If you're feeling like you don't belong, that's something we need to work on together. But you don't need to handle this alone. His shoulders relaxed slightly, but his expression didn't lose its edge. Yeah, maybe, he muttered, glancing down at the floor. The silence stretched out between us, heavy and charged. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap that had always been there, but something held me back. He wasn't ready, and perhaps neither was I. Finally, he broke the silence. I thought you should know. He turned to leave, his hand back on the doorknob. Noah, I said, stopping him in his tracks. He looked back at me, his eyes searching mine for something I couldn't define. Next time, knock, I said softly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. His lips twitched in the briefest hint of a smile. Sure. And then he was gone, leaving the door slightly ajar. I stared at the space he had occupied moments ago, the room suddenly feeling much emptier than it had before. Something told me this wasn't the end of the conversation. It was only the beginning. The next evening, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Noah lingering in the doorway again, his hands tucked into his hoodie pockets like before. His presence wasn't unwelcome, but it wasn't expected either. "Hey," I greeted, keeping my tone neutral. "You hungry?" He shrugged, his eyes darting around the room. "Not really." I set the knife down and leaned against the counter, sensing there was more on his mind. "What's up, Noah?" He hesitated, shuffling his feet before speaking. I wanted to say sorry for last night. For, barging in." I nodded, appreciating the effort. "Apology accepted. But I hope you can talk to me. Anytime. Just, maybe, knock first." I tried to add a lightness to my tone, but it only seemed to make him more nervous. "I know," he said quickly, though his voice lacked conviction. "It's just that I didn't know who else to go to." Something in his words made me pause. "What's going on, Noah? This doesn't sound like just a bad day or feeling out of place. Is something else bothering you?" He shifted uncomfortably, his shoulders hunching, as if he were trying to make himself smaller. "I don't know. Maybe. It's just hard, Dad's so busy all the time. And you." He trailed off, his eyes finally meeting mine, though they were clouded with something I couldn't quite identify. "And me?" I prompted, my voice soft. "You're here," he said, almost accusingly. "You're always here. I don't know how to deal with that." I frowned, confused by his tone. "What do you mean by that, Noah? Are you upset that I'm here?" "No, it's not that," he said quickly, running a hand through his hair. "It's just, I don't know how to act around you. You're not my mom, and you're not just some guy my dad married. You're different." His words hung in the air, heavy and ambiguous. There was an intensity in his gaze now, something raw and unfiltered that made my pulse quicken. "Noah," I said carefully, "if there's something you need to say, just say it. I don't want you carrying this around." He looked down, his jaw tightening. "I don't even know how to say it," he muttered. The silence that followed was almost suffocating. I could feel the tension radiating from him, but I didn't know how to ease it. He was standing there, a mix of vulnerability and something else I couldn't quite place. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Making what harder?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "This," he said, gesturing vaguely between us. "Whatever this is." "Noah," I began, but he cut me off. "Forget it," he said abruptly, turning on his heel. "No, wait," I called after him, my voice sharper than I intended. He froze but didn't turn around. "You need to tell me what's going on," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Because I can't help you if I don't understand." He stood there for a moment, his back to me, before finally speaking. "I'm scared, okay?" "Scared of what?" "Of you," he admitted, his voice cracking. He turned to face me then, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm scared how you make me feel, and I hate myself for it." The words hit me like a freight train. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The implications of what he just said were staggering, and I didn't know how to respond. "Noah," I said finally, my voice trembling, "you're not making sense." "Yes, I am," he said bitterly. "I've been making sense this whole time. You just don't want to hear it." He stepped closer, and I instinctively backed up, hitting the counter. "This isn't right," I said firmly, though my voice betrayed my own uncertainty. "I know," he said, his voice barely audible. "But it's how I feel, and I don't know what to do about it." There was a beat of silence, the air thick with unspoken words. Then, as quickly as the moment had escalated, it was over. "I shouldn't have said that," he muttered, stepping back. His face was flushed, his breathing uneven. "I shouldn't have come here." Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me alone in the kitchen with nothing but the sound of the rain tapping against the windows. I stared at the door, my mind racing. Whatever this was, it was far from resolved, and it was only going to get more complicated. Later that evening, I sat alone in the living room, the television humming quietly in the background. My thoughts were a storm, circling the words Noah had said in the kitchen. Scared how you make me feel. The weight of his confession was suffocating, but I couldn't ignore it. This wasn't something that could be left to fester. I needed to confront it, for his sake and for mine. The sound of hesitant footsteps broke my reverie. I looked up to see Noah standing at the edge of the room, his posture guarded, his face shadowed with regret. "Can I sit?" he asked softly. I nodded, motioning to the armchair across from me. He didn't sit there, though. Instead, he chose the far end of the couch, putting as much space between us as the furniture allowed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air felt fragile, like one wrong word could shatter it. "I owe you an explanation," Noah said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I turned to face him, keeping my expression calm despite the turmoil inside me. "You don't owe me anything, Noah. But if you want to talk, I'm here to listen." He exhaled shakily, his hands gripping his knees as though grounding himself. "Well, I said earlier, I didn't mean to put that on you. I shouldn't have said anything. You were being honest," I replied gently. "And honesty is important. But we need to talk about what it means, what it doesn't mean." He nodded, though he didn't look at me. "I don't know why I feel this way," he admitted. "I hate it. I hate myself for it." "Noah," I said firmly, leaning forward, "you're not wrong for having feelings. Feelings are messy and complicated, but they don't define who you are. What matters is what you do with them." He looked up then, his eyes filled with both shame and hope. "What am I supposed to do? How do I stop feeling like this?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. The first step is recognizing that these feelings don't have to control you. They're not permanent, and they don't have to ruin the relationships in your life. You're still figuring out who you are, and that's okay. But you have to set boundaries, for yourself and for others. He nodded again, his gaze dropping to his hands. "I just want things to go back to normal." "They can," I assured him, though I knew it wouldn't be easy. "But it's going to take time and effort from both of us. We need to be honest with each other, but we also need to be careful. There's a line we can't cross, Noah, and it's my job to make sure we don't." He swallowed hard, his face reddening. "I never meant to make you uncomfortable. I don't know." "I know you didn't," I said softly. "And I'm not angry. But we need to focus on building the right kind of relationship, a healthy one. You're my stepson, Noah, and that's a bond one takes seriously. I care about you, and I want what's best for you. That's why we have to deal with this the right way." For the first time that evening, his shoulders relaxed slightly. "I don't want to lose you or Dad. I don't want to ruin everything." "You're not going to lose anyone," I promised. "But you have to trust me. Trust that we can work through this, even if it feels impossible right now." He nodded, his expression shifting to one of quiet determination. "I'll try. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. That's all I ask," I said. The room fell into a more comfortable silence, the tension ebbing away like a receding tide. Noah's confession had changed things, but it hadn't broken them. There was a path forward, even if it wasn't entirely clear yet. Before he left the room, Noah paused by the doorway, looking back at me. "Thanks for not giving up on me." I smiled faintly. That's not something I'd ever do. As the door clicked softly behind him, I leaned back into the couch, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The storm had passed for now, but I knew the journey wasn't over. This wasn't just about boundaries or feelings. It was about growth, understanding, and navigating the complexities of family. And for the first time, I felt like we had a chance to figure it out together.